The station called Virex Junction never slept, it only rotated its violence. Cargo haulers docked, mercenaries drank, smugglers traded in whispers, and the air smelled of overheated metal and old blood. At the center bar, a human wiped glasses with slow, economical movements. He wore no insignia, no visible armor, no augmentations. His sleeves were rolled just enough to work, hiding pale scars that never quite faded. Patrons barely noticed him. In a place where predators advertised themselves loudly, quiet things were assumed harmless. 3 alien guards entered together, their exoskeletal armor clattering with deliberate volume. Their species stood taller than humans, plated and horned, bred for intimidation. Energy rifles hung at their sides more as decoration than necessity. They laughed as they crossed the room, voices layered and sharp, confident in the way only conquerors ever were. The bar fell quieter, not from respect, but calculation. No one wanted to be the distraction that justified a killing. The guards ignored the bartender completely. One leaned against the counter without asking, claws scratching the surface. Another mocked the drink selection, sneering at the word Earth, printed beside a forgotten bottle. They spoke openly about patrol quotas and disciplinary allowances, about how many bodies were permitted per shift. Their jokes drew nervous laughter from the room. The human kept wiping glass, breath steady, eyes unfocused in a way that suggested boredom rather than fear. Galactic consensus had made humans irrelevant. They were late arrivals, technologically uneven, stubbornly individual. They had lost wars loudly and then vanished quietly. To most species, that meant extinction in all but name. The bartender heard the assumptions every cycle. Humans broke. Humans begged. Humans died easily. None of it was worth correcting. A guard flicked a credit chip across the counter, missing the payment slot on purpose. "Clean that," he said, amused. The chip skittered to the bartender's knuckles. For an instant his hand stopped. Not in hesitation, but in assessment. He noted the distance to the exits, the rhythm of the room, the number of heartbeats present. Then he picked up the chip and placed it precisely where it belonged. The smallest guard leaned closer, peering at the human's face. "You look old," it said. "Did you fight for your world before it learned to kneel?" The question carried no malice, only curiosity, like asking a relic about rust. The bartender met the creature's gaze at last. His expression remained neutral, almost kind. "I serve," he said. It was not a lie. The guards lost interest. Their attention shifted to easier targets, softer voices. A shove sent a patron sprawling. A rifle but cracked bones somewhere in the crowd. The bartender reached for another glass, movements unchanged. Yet something in the room had tightened, a pressure few could name. The man behind the counter had gone very still, the way deep water stills before a storm. No one noticed. No one ever did. Above them, station lights flickered with scheduled indifference, illuminating faces that pretended not to see. The bartender felt the familiar weight settle behind his ribs, a memory of orders obeyed and lines crossed. He had chosen this obscurity deliberately, a place where nothing mattered enough to wake old reflexes. Stillness was survival now. He listened to the guards boast about tomorrow, about promotions earned through cruelty, about how the galaxy rewarded compliance. Each word pressed like a thumb against a bruise. Somewhere inside him, training waited patiently, cataloging sounds, angles, outcomes. He did not welcome it. He endured it. The glass in his hand rang softly as he set it down, a note lost beneath the noise. Outside the viewport, stars slid past in careless abundance. The galaxy was vast, arrogant, and forgetful. It had forgotten him. For the moment, that was exactly how he wanted it. Silence held patient, while consequences gathered beyond the bar's thin edge of waiting inevitability now. The galaxy had ridden humans off long before the bartender wiped his first glass that night. Most species believed the history books, or what their ambassadors claimed. Humans were slow, fragile, unremarkable. They had arrived late to interstellar politics, a species that relied on instinct and improvisation rather than psychic networks or genetic enhancements. In every report, humans lost. They retreated. They begged for mercy. The result, in alien eyes, was obvious, irrelevant. The bar hummed with gossip. Alien patrons compared human failures as if reading weather forecasts. One described Earth's fleet being crushed, another spoke of colonies taken with minimal resistance. A third laughed about an obsolete species, attempting to negotiate with a hive mind and failing. None of them suspected that human victories, small and surgical, had been erased from their histories. None understood the methodology of a species that thrived under pressure, that learned more from scarcity than from abundance. The guards joined the conversation, voices rising above the crowd. They dissected strategy with the arrogance of winners, citing encounters where humans had been eliminated with ease. The tallest guard leaned on the counter, claws tapping rhythms meant to intimidate. "Humans lack coordination," it said. "They fight as individuals. They cannot sustain prolonged campaigns." Another agreed, bragging about the ease of hunting stragglers in occupied zones, their rifles and biosuits overwhelming whatever primitive defenses humans could muster. They did not notice the bartender's eyes. They did not measure the slow tightening of his jaw, the micro-adjustments in posture that betrayed training. He listened as the guards mapped human failures like cartographers, blind to the hidden depths. Humans survived through ingenuity, by exploiting weaknesses other species never bothered to identify. They adapted instantly. They improvised lethally. Every defeat recorded in alien histories was only the failure of invaders who assumed predictability. The guards argued over weapon choice, debating the merits of disruptor rounds against biohybrid armor, oblivious to the fact that humans rarely fought on predictable terms. They mocked human colonies for lacking psychic shielding, unaware that humans' greatest defense was unpredictability. Plans could be traced, fleets anticipated, but humans reacted in ways that no calculation could contain. They thrived where others stumbled, not because of size or strength, but because of resilience and perception honed under relentless adversity. A younger alien asked why humans were ever feared at all. The others laughed, dismissive. "They were missed by the time they mattered," said one. "By the time the galaxy noticed, humans were gone or hiding." Laughter followed, harsh and dismissive. But in the bartender's silence, the memory of every myth, every whispered story of devastating precision, close-quarter combat, urban raids, stood ready. Humans were never supposed to survive the first encounter with overwhelming odds. Yet they did, systematically, without spectacle. The conversation drifted to Earth itself, a planet declared neutral, insignificant, a cultural relic. The guards spoke freely, confident that the species they derided would never intervene. The room was careless, the galaxy overconfident. The bartender moved efficiently, serving drinks, polishing surfaces, cataloging the guards' voices, rhythms, intentions. He noted the spacing, the angles of attack if one became violent. His hands were steady, his mind cataloging threats even as he appeared passive. Then a guard spilled a drink on another patron, shouting as if to prove dominance. The bartender's fingers paused mid-wipe. He did not act yet, but the air shifted. The galaxy's misunderstanding of humanity, its arrogance, its assumption of irrelevance, created a pressure that few recognized. Humans did not rely on perception to protect themselves. They relied on preparation, precision, and the ability to exploit oversight. The room's tension grew without visible change. The guards believed themselves untouchable. In truth, they had already underestimated the bartender's capacity to correct that belief in moments. The galaxy, so confident, was blind to the rules humans played by. The first strike came not from a weapon, but from observation. One guard shoved a patron to the floor, a casual act meant to reinforce dominance. The bartender did not move immediately, only letting his hand rest briefly on the counter, as if calculating angles and outcomes. Years of instinct layered beneath years of discipline surfaced. The quiet precision of a lifetime spent in combat began to hum beneath his calm exterior. He had been trained to react before thought, to end threats decisively and without spectacle. What these aliens did not realize was that every microsecond of hesitation was already accounted for. In the blink that followed, the bartender's movements were measured, exact. He pivoted toward the aggressor with minimal motion, using leverage to redirect the guard's momentum against him. The bar became a chessboard in which he controlled every piece. Liquids and glassware were not accidents. They were tools, improvised weapons. A bottle smashed against the counter sent shards along a path that cut off escape routes. Every action was efficient, every reaction anticipatory. The aliens saw only the surface, not the orchestration beneath it. As the scuffle escalated, whispers of his past echoed internally rather than aloud. He had been part of Earth's final, most classified defense units, those designed for urban annihilation, for close-quarters infiltration against enemies who considered themselves invincible. His reputation had been one of myth even among humans, efficient, cold, unstoppable. To alien observers, he appeared simply as one more human, unimpressive. They had never encountered his type, a human who thrived in chaos, who could turn an ordinary environment into a death trap with nothing but instinct and experience. Every guard movement was catalogued in real time. Their armor, their muscle structure, even the predictable way they relied on their own confidence, all analyzed in fractions of a heartbeat. He exploited weaknesses that no alien strategist had ever theorized. The tallest guard lunged with overconfidence, expecting a simple pushback. Instead, the bartender shifted weight, avoided the strike, and used the aggressor's momentum to slam him into a wall. Bones cracked, not haphazardly, but in precise sequences designed to disable while conserving effort. The others faltered for the first time, realizing too late that the human had not reacted, he had controlled. One smaller guard attempted to flee, but the bartender anticipated every exit, using debris and environmental hazards to close gaps. He moved silently, efficiently, leaving the illusion of space while compressing opportunity. Aliens' instinct to overwhelm, to rely on size and strength, became a liability in the human's hands. Every strike he delivered was calculated for effect, combining incapacitation, deterrence, and psychological dominance. By the time one survivor paused to assess, fear had already been embedded. They had underestimated a species that no longer needed reinforcement to justify its lethality. The fight was over almost before it truly began. No fanfare, no shouting beyond the necessary alerts of impact. Patrons who had dared to watch were too stunned to intervene. The bartender wiped his hands clean as though he had merely rearranged furniture. The room had changed. It recognized his presence without him announcing it. Aliens whispered nervously, unsure if what they had witnessed was a fluke or the return of a forgotten predator. The myths of humans' capacity for violence were not exaggeration, they were understatement. He remained calm, controlled, silent. His expression betrayed no satisfaction, no anger, only the awareness of capability. Every movement had been precise, purposeful, minimal. No one could claim they were attacked without reason, and yet no one doubted the consequence if provocation continued. Humans had never relied on fear as a weapon, but in that moment, it suffused the room anyway. The bartender had revealed himself, not to boast, not to conquer, but to remind that underestimating humanity was a mistake no species could afford to repeat. The galaxy had judged him irrelevant. He had silently corrected that assumption. The aftermath of the first strike did not linger in theatrics. The remaining guards recalculated instantly, their arrogance shattered by efficiency they had not anticipated. They had expected resistance, perhaps even some scuffle, but not the meticulous, surgical precision of a human who had mastered violence as an art. Every muscle and joint, every instinct and training exercise, had been catalogued and deployed in sequence. The air itself seemed altered, thick with the recognition that the rules of engagement had changed, that the galaxy's understanding of humans was incomplete. The bartender moved through the room with a controlled calm, his presence no longer background but a constant pressure. One guard attempted to rally, raising a disruptor rifle, eyes wide with disbelief. The bartender anticipated the motion before the weapon cleared its holster. He sidestepped with minimal effort, using the alien's own momentum to force a misstep, knocking the rifle from reach. The simplicity of the action belied the depth of strategy behind it, leverage, timing, and an intimate knowledge of how overconfidence could be exploited. The others hesitated, caught between instinctual response and the recognition that speed alone could not prevail. He utilized the environment with ruthless efficiency. Countertops, stools, spilled liquids, and narrow corridors became instruments in a deadly choreography. He did not need energy weapons, precision and ingenuity sufficed. Each guard's physiology was observed and exploited: the way joints bent under stress, the limits of exoskeletal plates, the natural vulnerabilities hidden beneath armor. Actions were swift but intentional, each strike calculated to maximize control while minimizing unnecessary expenditure of energy. Even the room itself seemed to bend to his presence, every element employed with careful deliberation. Psychological dominance emerged without a word. The surviving guards' confidence eroded with each calculated motion. Their earlier bravado, rooted in physical superiority and prior victories, dissolved as they realized they were predictable in ways they had never considered. The human remained calm, unshaken, as if the chaos of their aggression existed only within their own perceptions. Fear crept in not from visible weaponry but from certainty that any misstep would be punished instantly and irrevocably. The galaxy's underestimation had created its own correction. One guard, the smallest and fastest, attempted a desperate escape. The bartender tracked each step, timing his interception perfectly. By the time the alien reached what it assumed was a clear path, he was blocked from every angle. Liquids on the floor impeded footing, debris created channels directing movement, and the bartender's presence alone cut off perception of alternative exits. The alien realized too late that every choice had already been anticipated, and resistance was futile. Submission or defeat were the only outcomes the environment now allowed. It was not brute force that conquered, but calculated inevitability. As the room settled, the remaining patrons understood without words what had occurred. The air vibrated with residual tension, and whispers carried the message: humans were not merely survivors, but operators of a sophistication that defied alien expectations. The bartender returned to his position, wiping a glass with the same deliberate motion, unaffected by the chaos he had orchestrated. His calm was a lesson in itself, reinforcing that humans did not announce their power, they manifested it when necessary, and only with purpose. The last guard who dared to assess the situation did so in silence, breathing unevenly, eyes scanning the space in disbelief. Recognition dawned: humans were not to be underestimated. They did not rely on overwhelming strength, psychic amplification, or advanced alien technology. They relied on preparation, ingenuity, timing, and adaptability honed under relentless conditions. The galaxy had assumed irrelevance. The bartender had demonstrated capability. Without spectacle, without exaggeration, he had enforced a lesson that no alien would forget: humans survive, adapt, and execute with precision that transcends expectation. The universe had witnessed a correction in assumption, quiet but absolute, leaving no doubt that underestimating humanity came at a cost measured in seconds and consequence. The station returned to its routine as if nothing had happened, but nothing was the same. Alien authorities arrived later, scanning the area, reviewing data, seeking witnesses. Footage had been partially corrupted, recordings interrupted by power fluctuations, a pattern too convenient to be accidental. Patrons avoided details, speaking in vague terms of a human who moved with lethal precision, whose calm defied understanding. Rumors spread quickly through channels meant for gossip. The bartender was no ordinary human. The galaxy, arrogant in its assumptions, was forced to reconsider what it thought it knew. The council quietly noted the incident, filing it under anomalies rather than threats. Officially, humans were still considered marginal, irrelevant. Unofficially, whispers of the bartender circulated among captains, mercenaries, and station governors. Stories of a human dismantling elite guards alone were told in subdued tones, always with caution. He was a ghost in these tales, never named, never traced, yet his reputation began to seed a quiet unease. No fleet dared consider Earth lightly anymore. No patrol underestimated human adaptability. The galaxy, vast and confident, learned that invisibility could be more terrifying than display. The bartender had moved on before authorities could arrive. Another station, another bar, another quiet existence. He maintained the same routine: glasses wiped, patrons served, movements economical. No expression betrayed the events of the previous night. He was careful, patient, deliberate. Yet beneath the surface, his presence carried the weight of possibility, the knowledge that if provoked, the galaxy would face consequences no history book could fully describe. Each station, each outpost, would feel the residual echo of caution without understanding its source. Legends began to form in fragments. A pilot spoke of a human whose comm stopped a riot in its tracks. A smuggler recounted guards falling silently, unable to comprehend the precision behind their defeat. The myths painted the human as a specter, a force that existed beyond the conventional measures of strength or technology. These stories spread quietly, never fully verified, yet they carried a single lesson: humans did not need to assert dominance to command fear. Their power lay in control, intelligence, and execution, in the relentless pursuit of efficiency. The final measure of humanity's presence was subtle but absolute. The bartender never sought recognition, never celebrated. His role remained the same: an observer, a server, but every act was infused with a quiet authority born of experience. The galaxy could classify, could relegate, could erase records, yet the impact of one human's precision endured. Underestimation had consequences, and patience amplified their effect. Those who witnessed or heard the stories understood instinctively: humans waited. They calculated. They acted when necessary, decisively and irreversibly. And in waiting, they became a force the galaxy could neither predict nor ignore. By the time Virex Junction resumed its chaotic rhythm, the legend had already taken root in the minds of those who survived, those who spoke in hushed tones, those who recorded whispers into their own logs. The bartender existed beyond confirmation, an invisible arbiter of consequence. The galaxy continued its arrogance, unaware that humans were not just survivors or fighters, they were architects of inevitability. Every station, every patrol, every alien who assumed humans were irrelevant had already underestimated the species, and that misjudgment had a cost measured not in fleets or weapons, but in precision, patience, and the quiet inevitability of a human who waited for the right moment to act. The story was not over, for humans never truly revealed themselves. They only reminded the universe that underestimating them was a mistake no one could afford to repeat.